Talk about low-budget flights, no food or movies, I'm out of here. I like running better. Welcome back, YouTube viewers, to another video. So today we're finally going to be concluding my Kung Fu Panda series. I review Kung Fu Panda 3. So before we get into this, I'd like to thank you all for the support I've been getting. It's always nice. Got a few more subscribers since my How to Train Your Dragon 2 video did really well at the time of recording this. I'm surprised at how many views it got. So let's see if we can hit my 100 subscriber goal by June 11th. Without further ado, skadoosh, and let's get into this. So the first part of this movie I want to highlight is the action. The action in all the Kung Fu Panda movies is really good, and I suppose it never gets better than the first one, but the action here is really good, especially with the way the whole movie looks. I, People have talked about the colors of these movies before and how each movie highlights a specific color. The first one, especially with the villains anyway, the first one always says blue around Tai Lung, the second one always says red around Shen, and this third one in the entire movie really has green around Kai. They really like the color green, and it works well for this movie. I mean, the way the movie opens, all the Kung Fu Panda movies open with some really great scene. The way this one opens with Kai's introduction, he's fighting Oogway in the spirit realm, and we get to see Oogway again, which is always nice. How can you not love Oogway? And I like the final battle a lot. That looked really cool. I also like the scene where Kai attacks the Jade Palace and destroys it. That was really well handled. The way the camera movements and everything. I also like the action scene against Kai's Jade Warriors was cool. Except there's not nearly as much action in this movie as there was in the first two. Or more accurately, there's about as many action scenes. They just aren't as long. Because yeah, this movie focuses more on humor. And yeah, the movie's funny, but it's still very funny, but we'll get to that issue later. I'd like to highlight the directors of this movie. This one wasn't just directed by Jennifer Yuh Nelson like the second one, it was also directed by some other guy whose name I can't remember. I have to wonder if he's the reason why this movie didn't come out quite the same as the first two, but it might have just been a studio thing. After all, I think it's pretty noticeable that after Kung Fu Panda 2, DreamWorks started to really go downhill. Sure, you still get your How to Train Your Dragon 2 and 3s, your this, and uh yeah. As you can tell, DreamWorks is not doing nearly as well as they used to. But then again, they've always been pretty inconsistent. And can't mention talk about this movie without really going into the villain, Kai. And yeah, everything there has been that can be said about Kai has been said. He's a decent villain, but Tai Lung and Shen are way better because they are. The one thing I will say that I've never heard anybody say before is that I don't like J.K. Simmons' performance. The actual performance is fine. I just don't like the voice. He doesn't sound nearly as menacing as he should. The voice kind of takes me out of it. And also, since this movie focuses more on humor, and he's not quite in this one as much as Shen was in the second one. I mean, Thailand wasn't in the first one that much, but he made up for that with his presence. And Kai still has a presence, but when they make jokes at his expense it's just kind of hard to take him as a serious threat. But they still do take him enough of a serious threat. His old Jade Powers thing was cool. He turns Mantis and Crane into these zombie green Jade Warrior things. And his connection with Uguay is interesting as his brother in arms. I like the scene where the Furious Five all gather around Shifu's scroll to see the legend of Kai. Although I think the bit could have been done more with this. I'm not mad that he didn't have as interesting a backstory as Tai Lung and Shen. I mean, it's still an interesting backstory. It's just that when I first watched this movie, I was thinking, what does he mean when he says, Oogway betrayed me? But then I asked someone about that, and he said, well, no, he just means that as in, he wanted all the chi power, and Oogway didn't want him to happen, so he fought back. Which, yeah, I guess that's about it. I don't know why I didn't understand that, but Kai doesn't leave quite the presence the others do. Still a really great final battle with him, though, and he still leaves enough of an impression. Great design. And he mirrors the movie. He's a more supernatural threat, which is appreciated, especially with the whole movie's theme of spirit. The first movie was about body, the second one was about mind, the third one's about spirit. Then, of course, wouldn't be a great Kung Fu Panda movie without great music. which is why Kung Fu Panda 4 isn't that good. Well, one of the reasons anyway. Of course, everybody loves Kai's theme. Who wouldn't? I like all the Spirit World music. The remix of Kung Fu Fighting isn't as good as the original, but I like it a lot. I like the music in the Panda Village. Yeah, there's not as much to say about Kung Fu Panda 3 as there was about the first two. Still like this one a lot though. I like the music here and especially in the scene where yeah, I can't think of any specific examples. Let's just gloss over that one. Great music. Have to mention Hans Zimmer. Although it could be because John Powell didn't work with him on this one. The first two were done with Hans Zimmer and John Powell. Mostly Hans Zimmer probably, but not as much John Powell. And you can tell that John Powell put a lot into this when you see the work he did solo with the How to Train Your Dragon series. I guess he really was missing his mark, but still, Hans Zimmer's a really good composer, so he did a great job here. Then there's Poe. I love Poe's arc in this movie. It's not as good as the first two, but I like it a lot. The first one was about the only person who can define you is you, which is really well handled here, or there. And here it's he knows who he is. He learned that from the first two movies. But now it's what does that mean? Because as this movie, he finally meets his biological father, who turns out was alive. Of course, there's a bit of conflict with his adopted father, Mr. Ping, because he's just mad. He feels like his son is being taken away from him, but that's not quite how it goes. I like Poe interacting with the pandas here as we see that this is this who he is? Because he's a panda, so isn't this who he'd be now? He's also questioned, yeah, he's the Dragon Warrior, but what does that mean? He thinks being the Dragon Warrior just means punching and kicking. Which he's, of course, asked after Shifu makes him teach the Furious Five once, and he totally messes up. And he's just confused as he's told the line of, you can't be you by being me, you can only be you by being you, or something like that. It's supposed to be confusing. I like Poe's dad here, or his biological father. He's pretty funny. I also like that they even went with this at all. It also though continues the weird DreamWorks tradition of their sequels always focusing on the main character's parents. They did it in Shrek 2, which I guess is different from the way they did it before, but then they did it again in Madagascar 2, then they did it again in How to Train Your Dragon 2, except this is the third movie instead, but it still technically is in the second one because the whole part of Poe's arc there was wondering about his parents, his biological parents, since he's told he's adopted. Uh, Although, yeah, this whole section really drags though. When the Panda Village, it's funny and all, but and it's I like the look of the Panda Village, but it's not quite as good as the other movies. I mean, well, yeah, they focus way too much on the humor here. It's still funny, but also one moment I've never seen people talk about specifically is that in that really good scene where Poe's biological dad is talking to him about his mother. It's really good, but in the last few seconds, it gets interrupted by the joke panda who always hugs people. Which, yeah, it's funny, but that undercuts the scene. I didn't like that. But I like how his arc follows up in the conclusion of the movie, though. He defeats Kai in the spirit realm. Since Oogway's in the spirit realm, he gets officially named as his successor, and finally gets to wear that cool hat and robe like he always wanted before. Yeah, it's nothing amazing, this arc here, but it's really satisfying to just see him defeat Kai as he says, I've wondered, who am I? Am I the son of a panda? A goose? Am I a student or a master? Turns out I'm all of them. I am the Dragon Warrior. Yeah, that's what I like how this movie focuses on. He learned before, of course, the only person who can define you is you, and that your story may not have had a happy beginning, but that does not make you who you are. It is the rest of your story. But here he learns that you are not defined by one specific thing. What makes you who you are is multiple things. As he says, yeah, being the son of a panda, a goose, and being a student and a master. That is what the Dragon Warrior is. And that's part of the reason why it makes no sense there could be another Dragon Warrior in the fourth movie, but whatever. I just like how he gets a copy of Oogway's stick here. And it seems special before, but Oogway says, you can take it. I have a bigger one. And yeah, that's all I gotta say about Kung Fu Panda 3. Definitely not as much as the first two. And honestly, while I haven't seen every DreamWorks movie, this only ranks as number 12 on my ranking. It's still very good, but considering just how good their movies can be, This is kind of disappointing. And there isn't much I'd change. Still pretty enjoyable. It's a good conclusion. I can't believe this didn't even get nominated for Best Animated Feature, though, at the Oscars. And this should have won, too. I mean, would it lose to Zootopia or something? Oh, I should do a whole video on how bad the Best Animated Feature nominations and winners are at the Oscars, but you can check me out on the my Casting Call Club profile, and just ask you guys in the comments, what did you think of Kung Fu Panda 3? Did you think it was the true masterpiece conclusion the series deserved, or did you just think it was pretty good like most people? I've heard some people who didn't even like this one. I remember seeing what the Odd Ones Out said about it years ago. Kung Fu Panda, perfect movie. Kung Fu Panda 2, just as good as the original. Kung Fu Panda 3, sorry, Jablinski, I just wasn't feeling this one. But that's also coming from the guy who said that How to Train Your Dragon 3 was terrible. So, don't listen to him. I like the Odd Ones Out, but whatever. That's all for now, and as always, keep on juicing!